All right. Happy New Year, everyone. Different date this month. We're going to keep it short and simple this month, I think. And I have one question, which I'll ask each of you, and hopefully I can come up with my own answer here. I've seen a number of times where someone says sort of smugly, hey, if you don't know how to blah, you shouldn't be allowed to computer. And it's this sort of smug shot at someone because they didn't know or understand something. So putting a bit more positive spin on that, if you could go back in time and grab your college age self or first job self, or you just met a college student who was going into the workforce, what's the one or two things that you would tell them, man, you really need to pay attention to this? Understand the foundations of this, and you will be much more successful and better off. Go.
Wow. It's a really good question. I mean, if I think back to what I would tell my college age self, it's a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with work. It's mostly what teams are going to win sporting events and what stocks are going to go up a lot.
So you're Biff.
I'm Biff. Yeah, I'm totally Biff. But, I do get a chance to occasionally talk to recent graduates and people who are going to be graduates. And it's usually the advice I keep giving, whether it's the best advice or not, is like, one, don't get mired in a particular technology. I feel like a lot of students are like, what's the technology I should learn that's going to carry me 15 years into the future and make me a lot of money? And I think the answer is there's no single technology that you should partner yourself with that closely. You should learn about technology and learn how to do things.
I agree with that, but I think it's worked really well for Apple people in some ways.
Well, but if I look back at my career, like I don't feel like I feel like some of the best decisions I made in the past as a Mac administrator have been learning other things, like knowing some Linux and knowing NT server and things like that have been really, like, being a specialist is good.
Is that because we're old?
I think that's because we're old.
And I only ask because I remember growing up and there wasn't one set technology. It was like, Atari came out with the Atari 800 and that was really cool. But at the same time, right, like there was the Apple II, which was really cool, and the Commodore Amiga, and like I wanted to learn about all of it, right?
Right.
Because there was no set like winner. And then of course it became Mac PC. But I think people who have gone down the road of iOS developer, they've done pretty well. But I mean, I agree with you in general, I think.
Well, so that you're talking about a field that's not quite 10 years old. Like, I don't know that I would tell someone, just learn to be the best iOS developer you can be, and don't worry about anything else, because I don't know that in 10 years that's going to be such a great decision to have made now. And I think I always say, like, learn to be a great iOS developer, but in doing that, learn about development patterns and design patterns and the way to write code, and then you'll feel comfortable switching to another language or switching to another paradigm if you have to or if you want to. But the thing I always tell young people or people starting out now is, like, you should have code posted somewhere that people can see. Like, you should have contributed to something, you should have an open source project of your own, you should have, even if it's not useful to anybody else, you should have GitHub or Bitbucket account where people can look at stuff you've actually done.
I'd agree. Where possible.
Where possible.
I think that's just part of self-promotion. That's one of the many ways you can help promote yourself.
And I would always say stay away from certifications.
I have a lot of feelings about certifications, and like you, it sounds like I think they're negative. But
I've thrown away
I would say be wary of certifications. That you can learn stuff, but they're not the be all and all of everything.
I agree.
And you just need to go in knowing what you're getting, and some people like them and some people think they're ridiculous. But
So I think as an interviewer, interviewing someone, when I see a certification on someone's resume, I know that means possibly very little. But unfortunately, some jobs require them. And if there was some job I really wanted for whatever reason, and one of their requirements was a particular certification, I would probably go out and get that certification.
You don't necessarily ignore them, but
Yeah.
don't think of them as a way to learn everything you know.
If I see a resume with 1 or 2 or 3 certifications on it, it doesn't mean anything to me. If I see a resume with 25 certifications on it, I know this person isn't good at anything.
Yeah.
Well,
probably.
Or potentially.
It's a strong negative indicator.
It's a strong negative indicator.
I've had a few candidates with like a ring of certification badges around their resume. And they were okay, and I've had others, obviously with none that were terrible. So it's not all or nothing, but just be wary. But at least in the Mac land, there's not a lot anymore, really. I don't know, Jamf, something.
Yeah, I guess
whatever.
you're right.
If I saw someone,
But again, I'm also completely out of the loop here, and I've never really worked on any certifications. So.
I had ACSE at some point, and I don't know. I don't feel like it helped me in any way. I don't feel it hurt me.
I think if you're a independent contractor working on your own, that
Can be.
That's some of those are useful to get listed in the right spots and things like that. But
Yeah.
I don't. It's a consultant, but I don't know if that really is necessary.
So I thought when you offered your first bit of advice, I thought you might be going down a different road. But I was going to say some of the things I think I would tell people getting started would have nothing to do with technology in the way of, be a human being and learn to work with others and learn to consider other people's point of view, and certainly think about the impact your work can have, both positive and negative. And if you think the impact of your work is going to be very negative, maybe look for a different line of work. That can be difficult sometimes, certainly, but
Your work is going to be negative. Interesting. I would agree with that.
well, you can have a negative impact on the world. I remember, God, at least a decade ago, possibly more, reading this article about this drug raid in Colombia, and this place was set up like their IT practices were like the best you'd ever find, and they knew where all their shipments were, and they knew where but someone had to sit down and write all this for them and develop it and be a system administrator. So that's someplace where I would hopefully not find myself is sort of the type of thing I'm thinking about. And not to turn this into anything political, but we keep talking about possible Muslim registries. Well, if there's a Muslim registry, that is going to be technology based. That's going to be we're not doing this in binders anymore, right? So I wouldn't want to be the person writing that database for tracking people.
Yeah.
So
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean by negative, possibly negative. Maybe other people don't see that as negative. So, working with people.
When I was consulting and I had younger consultants working for me, my advice to them was always show up on time.
That's a good one.
I said, if the clients knew what it was you did, they wouldn't hire you to do it. They do it themselves. But they do know if you're there on time or not.
That's true.
So customer service skills are important.
Yeah, that's kind of
written and communication skills are important.
Written communication skills. That can be a tough one to develop.
Yeah.
Clay, any thoughts?
I was
you-
going to say, don't focus on one thing. Like, I mean, like, you know,
I think-
don't be a. I mean, well, I would be wary of focusing too deeply on one thing, because you can be a fantastic expert on the one thing, but then that's just the one thing. And if you haven't expanded and that one thing goes away or changes, or your situation changes where you can't work on that one thing anymore, then that gets complicated.
I think.
I mean, most people, and I think the other thing I would say is, tell myself back then, is fake it until you make it. Like, honestly, like a lot of really, really smart people inside Google, that's you know, these high-end software engineers and product managers, that's what they do. They're like, I've never worked on this thing before. Fine, I'll do it. I'll learn it. I'll figure it out. I'll go, you know, it's just go, jump in, eventually figure it out. It helps to be incredibly smart if you're one of these Swedes.
Yeah. So I agree with the former point that you made and that you made about not focusing on one thing. And I think that works for the majority of people.
Yeah.
Where that doesn't work is if you have the opportunity to get so deep on one subject that you are the absolute master of it and everyone comes to you for that subject or that topic. So someone who's like, you know, CPU designer, right? They're really deep down on one topic. And
Sure. But I mean, even
yes, they need to keep up with new developments and things like that, or people who design.
But even if you spend all of your time and you're great at Ruby. I don't know who would want to do that, but if you say you're great at Ruby, but you get freaked out by, I don't know, Swift or Python or Objective-C or anything like that. You need to be able to try to generalize the things you know into other domains.
I think I'm always a big proponent of what's coming next. I think, like, to me, like, that's the biggest, to take a more macro level approach, like, that, to me, that's the biggest sign a company is not a good investment, is that they have no idea what's next. We're selling widgets really fast. We're going to be the widget king forever. And with all we do is sell widgets. And I think that's a big problem, because at some point that's going to fail. I think it's the same with individuals in your career, but I think, like, if you look at it like, I'm a CPU designer, that's an awesome career and it's very varied and very wide. If you're like, I'm an ARM, like I'm a Motorola ARM developer and that's all I do, that's dangerous, because eventually that's going to end.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
And I think, like, if you say I'm a Ruby developer, that's dangerous, because at some point, I can guarantee in the future, at some point, the demand for Ruby developers will drop. And you're going to have to be really, really good to be one of the ones that gets the jobs. That may be 20 years or 25 years from now.
Well, in 25 years from now,
it limits your possibilities more than anything else. I mean, it's not that necessarily Ruby will go away, but there might be fewer and fewer opportunities and more opportunities on other programming languages. And if you feel like I'm going to get freaked out if I have to learn Go,
well, keep up your Ruby skills, because in 25 years, we're going to hit the Y2038 problem, and they're going to have to pull all these Ruby people out of retirement, just like they did with COBOL for Y2K. Your skills are going to be in demand again to get these legacy systems running again. No, but that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I was always impressed with these people who, like, they're a developer, right? They're not a Ruby developer or a C# developer or whatever. It's just like, you could throw them at anything, and before they're reading the docs and they're figuring it out, and it's like, boom, hey, they just wrote this thing. You're like,
which doesn't mean you can't have a favorite language.
Absolutely,
or be like,
absolutely.
I'm a black belt master in Ruby. I can muddle my way through Python. But if you have this fixed idea in your, and I'm not a black belt master in Ruby, but
is anyone?
No, I don't. Someone probably is. But if you should just be thinking to yourself, I'm a developer, and this is what I spent most of my time on, and this is what I'm really good at right now. But that's going to change. And to widen the scope, like we're talking about development, I think the same is true in IT.
Right.
It's like, I'm a Mac guy. Like, at least twice in my career, there have been very long periods where it looked like being a Mac guy was a very poor choice. Like 1997, 1998, that really looked like that might be a dead-end career. And it was very important, like to be able to say, I can also do Windows. I can do server stuff. I can do this. I can do that. I can do networking. You know, like if you focus down too hard and feel like, oh, I can't get out of this, that can be problematic.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But to slightly counter that, I don't want to say to counter that, but I think the other piece of advice I like to give people is to dive in deep where you can and figure out how things work and what makes things work where possible, right? So, hey, Apple just introduced Arc. What is this doing? Hey, I'm going to take a debugger and start looking through this just to see what's actually happening. It's not magic.
Sure. Even less complicated than that. If you're a Mac administrator, know what happens when you press the power button on a Mac.
Yep.
Yeah. Understand what launch D is and how it works, if that's even possible. In the new.
That's another one you're gonna have to pull out the debugger for.
Right. So I mean, just
it's not open source anymore.
Asking a candidate to describe everything that happens during a OS 10 startup process, startup process. It's very revealing.
At least know. So maybe that's even on a broader level, just troubleshooting skills and not being afraid to dive in and knowing how to narrow down where to look for something. Mm-hmm. So I think anytime you're curious about how something works on the system, you should kind of dive in and figure it out. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that you should always go deep, but I always think of it personally as knowing how what you're doing relates to the industry, relates to, like, I know well how Apple does X, and I know vaguely how it's on Linux and Windows, and like I know what other considerations they could have taken into account. That's to some extent, that's not being totally invested in one platform.
And if you're too busy or it's too complicated, wait a few weeks, and then someone like Michael Lynn will figure it all out.
Yeah,
just leave it house, and someone smart will.
Someone smart will figure it out.
Stack Overflow. That's the other good piece of advice. That copy paste is awesome.
Yeah.
That's probably another discussion. I'm
GitHub,
not sure.
GitHub code search. Wait. Someone else has solved this problem before.
Yeah.
All right. I think we can keep it nice and short this month. We'll see everyone else next month. Thanks so much.